Congratulate Oakbridge for organizing the Vidhi Utsav and particularly for inviting so many young students, lawyers to acquaint them with the issues of publishing and so on. I must thank Shrish for rescheduling my talk from morning to afternoon. I was stuck in court in the forenoon and I had to come in the afternoon. So, my topic is authoring excellence, tips for writing. Whenever any young intern comes to my office, comes to my chamber, and he says that, can you give me any advice? The first thing I tell him is, write. If you can, write articles if you can. And there is a reason for that. You see, one thing you should remember as lawyers, I'm talking to people who intend to practice and who intend to succeed at the bar. One way of achieving professional success is to take up writing. I'll just give something, because it's embarrassing to talk about yourself, but I thought if I give my own experiences, perhaps it could inspire some of you to follow the same path and become writers. My writing journey began in 1981 as a lawyer, and now it's 45 years since I've been writing. When I was in the law college, I read a book by O.C. Mazengab on advocacy. It's a very unknown book. And the author quotes Winston Churchill and says, "Get known, young man. Get favorably known if possible, but get known." Now, for a lawyer, when I was a junior, we had no issues of YouTube and podcasts and blogs, and all that was absolutely not available. I decided to be a tax lawyer, and the one way of getting known, the one way of quote unquote marketing yourself, is to write frequently and consistently. There are two benefits of this. One is when you write, there is a somewhat amount of precision in your thinking. You analyze judgments and you write about it. And when I was a junior, I was specializing in income tax. And we often had different tax journals where there would be conflicting judgments. There will be Madras High Court taking one view, Gujarat High Court taking one view. So typically I would choose those kind of cases and try to see why is the conflict, what is the analysis. So I would get the chance of analyzing two possible views and presenting my view. The other reason for writing was, apart from teaching, that was the only source of income. To those of you who are now living today with money being what it is, as a junior in the Madras High Court, I started off with a junior fee of 100 rupees a month. And in 1984, it went up to a princely sum of 350 rupees a month. So that was the thing. Of course, money went a long way. I mean, a ticket from Bombay to Pune by Deccan Queen would be 9 rupees 60 paise. So 100 rupees was, but that was the only way of earning money was teaching, writing, and it got me to understand the subject better. Now, I'll tell you some tips on writing. If you're interested, you can follow it. First of all, don't do random writing. Right? Writing, if it's for professional success, for professional mastery, for professional clarity, then it has to be in the subject you want to specialize in. So if I was a lawyer, I never wrote a single article on land acquisition or rent control. I wrote only on tax and I wrote on constitution. Right from law college, I was very clear I wanted to be a tax and a constitution lawyer. So I never deviated from these two topics. I also started writing on company law because I edited Ramaya for more than 20 years. So one thing you can take it from me is to write. Today you have a great advantage. When I was writing, we had to confine articles to 800 to 1,000 words. And you can write well, but condensing it to that thing is always a problem. Then the other important thing is, so the first point you should note is to write in your chosen field. Suppose you're a junior, 1 year, then suppose you start taking up trademark, hypothetically. Or you want to be a patent lawyer. Then one recommendation, is that you start writing on trademarks and patents on a consistent basis. There is no point writing one article today, then writing something 2.5 months later, again 4 months later. It's of no use. It's of use, but it will not serve the purpose. It has to be consistent on a consistent basis. So in 1981, I set myself the target of writing one article a week. And in 2 years, 104 weeks, I wrote 77 articles. I got married in between, so I lost. Obviously, this is the priorities in life. So I wrote 77 articles at that point of time, week after week after week. Because of my articles, I started getting invited to participate in tax seminars. After every budget, the big seniors would speak on the thing, but small people like me would be asked to supplement something towards the end and so on. So those speaking engagements started coming up. So the second point is write on the chosen field of specialty and write on a consistent basis. Say write every Saturday, every fourth Saturday, whatever it is. The more consistent you are, the better. I will also advise you not to go straight away and attempt a book. It is better to write articles, come to be known as a specialist in that particular subject, and then you go on to writing books. The third thing I'll tell you is what is called the blue ocean strategy, or what is called the Zulu principle. When I started practice, I set up my practice in 1984. I was a junior for 3.5 years, and I set up my independent practice. I had very little work. Income tax was a very, very well-known field. You had the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, and you had masterpieces you had Kangan Palkiwala, you had Sampath Iyengar, you had Chaturvedi Pitsaria. Then I said, and they were already in 3-4 volumes. I said, if I had to write a book on this, it will be like holding a candle against the sun. I'll make no impact at all. To my good luck, the Central Excise Act and Central Excise Tariff came in 1986. The income tax, the Central Excise Tribunal also was set up. And I started getting work, and there was virtually, except R.K. Jain's book, there was no other book on Central Excise. There was a book by one person called F.L. Berarwala, but he had copied something from R.K. Jain, so R.K. Jain got an injunction against him, so that book went out of the market. So the only R.K. Jain's book was there. So I said, why not I start writing this book? And I remember my publisher, Mr. Wadhwa, and me, we finalized the deal in the Chinese restaurant in Madras. We decided what to do, how to go about it, and write this book. And I made it a condition that I don't want my book with somebody else. It'll be only my name. If you have faith in me, publish it. But I won't. See, because what happens sometimes, there is some book written by somebody, but it is printed in the name of some justice so-and-so, retired judge and so on. So that I didn't want it. I made it very clear on excise. The reason why I chose excise was, I said this is a new field. It's like the blue ocean. And if you write a book on this, you'll be the first person. So what they call in business, the first mover advantage will be there. So suppose you're practicing in a particular field. Now, if you're doing trademark, then trademarks are already old, but then it could be a new niche area. Suppose it could be trademark in, say, software, or it could patents in software, or it could be patents in artificial intelligence. I don't know. I'm just telling you. I'm just saying that go for an area which is uncharted, which is niche, where you can become to known as the go-to person for that particular subject. So I took up the Central Excise book. I started writing the book in November 86, and the book was finally completed in 1988, November. That was the first book. And that made a huge impact on my practice also. So one other advantage I'll tell you is those who have written books, all my colleagues, I've persuaded quite a few people to write books. Oakbridge has published books of my own former juniors, and everybody has benefited by writing a book. One thing is you get known, but the bigger advantage is that you personally understand the law better when you read books. When I wrote my first excise book, there was no computers. Everything was manually typed. And I had personally read 2,250 judgments of ELTs. Every judgment I had read and made notes. And I should have kept it, but the manuscript copies, corrections, etc., was ultimately 17 kilos. So when the book came to press, my 17 kilos of corrections, draft, etc. was there. Now I regret it. I just gave it away to Radhi, but I should have kept it. But that's how the book came. Then I wrote a book on exercise. Then I wrote a book on exercise procedure, which became very popular. Then my publisher said, why don't you start on Ramaya? Again, the timing is important. The company law board started in 1991. So I said, okay, this is an additional area of practice. I said, I've got tax, I've got company law and constitutional law. Constitutional law basically more of pro bono cases. Constitutional law is the jam. Your tax practice is the bread and butter. So I said, let me do Ramaya. So I started editing Ramaya. We had a team of 10 outstanding young lawyers. I was also young at that time. So all of us got together and I would be the chief editor. And all the corrections would go to Chief Justice J.C. Shah in Bombay. And he would personally make corrections and write it. And one small anecdote I'll give and I'll go. I wanted to meet J.C. Shah, Chief Justice Shah. In fact, he wrote the bank nationalization judgment. He wrote so many important judgments, the privy purses and so on. So I wanted to meet him. So I had gone to Pune for a function and I decided to take the morning train. I took an appointment with his secretary. I said, I'll come and see him the next morning. And as I was going in the Deccan Queen in the morning, I met another lawyer. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Bombay. I have to meet J.C. Shah. He said, J.C. Shah? Haven't you seen the paper today? I said, no. He said, he died yesterday. So I could never see him. That was one of my regrets in life. Anyway, now coming back, so I'll just tell my young friends how life has changed. I started writing the book in 86. And you have to type it out, make the manuscript and send it. Can you believe that there was no courier in 1986? So what I used to do is, I used to take the manuscript of say 50 pages, 100 pages, and we used to take it, me and my wife would go to the Madras railway station, put the manuscript in a small cloth bag, give it to the pantry waiter of Tamil Nadu Express or GT Express, come outside the station, make a trunk call. You have to stand in the queue. There's an STD booth. You call Nagpur and tell my publisher, Muttu, pantry car waiter is coming. So Vadva would be at Nagpur station and that Muttu will hand over the manuscript. Then after the proofs were there, and believe me, the proofs were with hypo. They used to be hung across. So if you make mistake, the whole thing had to be torn. There was no this cut, Control V, Control C, all this was not there. It was going to be very, very precise. So on the return journey, when the corrections came, some other Murugan will be there on the pantry car. He'll come. On this time, my cook in the morning would go, I had to go to court. So he'll go in the morning to the station, pick it up. So that's how we did the thing. And I would go to Nagpur every 15 days. I had a junior who was handling my work in the City Civil Court and High Court. Every 15 days, I would spend 10 days in Nagpur, come back, go back, come back, go back. And that's how ultimately the book was published. So you people are so fortunate. You got the benefit of technology. Today when I write for Oak Bridge or write for Lexis or something like that, there's no paper. Everything is put into a file, just sent off. And other horror thing was footnotes. If you make a change in the footnote, you have to manually change the footnote. Everything had to be done manually. Today, if the footnotes are 1 to 99, you add a footnote, everything gets renumbered. It is so beautiful and so simple. But all that thing was not there. So it was a fascinating journey. It's a different time. But what I'm telling you is that you are so blessed, so fortunate that you don't need to waste time on non-writing activities. Non-writing time is saved. Just imagine every time you have to go to the station, wait, then catch hold of Murugan, come back. Sometimes we'll have 25 minutes wait because there'll be STD booth. And then you dial 0712 and call Nagpur. Then that person will speak again. And then you speak. Again you come home. So this is, you see, 2-3 hours is just lost every week to go to the station. All that time is valuable for you. Now people ask me, how did you write? So I'm just giving experiences so you can learn from it if you wish to. I had a lot of work after I started my tax practice. My tax practice was little, but Indian Express gave me a lot of civil work in the city civil court. And there was another criminal lawyer in my chamber, Rajaram, God bless him. He had a lot of rent control cases, but he had a huge criminal practice. So all his rent control cases, trials, and which is called HRC was a rent control case, HRA was a rent control appeal. The small causes court. Madras has, being a charter court, has a small causes court. So small causes court was rent control cases and rent control appeal. So I would do all his rent control cases and civil cases and get a few tax cases in between. Now, how to write? I used to buy the Excise Law Times, and very often, as you know, Joseph, you have done internship, you have to wait for your case to come. So while waiting for my case, I would make basic pencil underlinings of the ratio of each decision. So I would take 2-3 ELTs with me, or there was ELT. I bought all the journals, ELT, Excus, Sencus, whatever it is, and take the journals and make underlining while I waited in court. So one way I was able to write was the waiting time I utilized to make research. Then I would come back. I had a stenographer who came every morning at 5:30 for 20 years. So then we would start typing in the morning at 5:30 and we would go on. So nobody should tell that we don't have time. It's not a question of lack of time, it's a question of priorities. What's important to you? If watching a Netflix is important, you will make the time. If watching writing is, you'll make the time. So ultimately you have to decide what is priority for you, and then that takes center stage. On a personal note, I can also say, because I'm just not trying to show off, but I'm trying to tell you that these are the things you have to forego. There is no, see, because time is finite. Everybody has only 24 hours. You take away 8 hours or 10 hours for eating, lunch, dinner, etc. Ultimately, you have very, very little amount of free time which you can devote to writing. So you have to make sacrifices. Me, I didn't watch a movie for 2.5 years because I had to finish my book from 86 to 88. But that's how ultimately the book got written. But the benefits are enormous. Ultimately, everything in life is a matter of choice. You want to write, you have to give up other things, other activities. If you want to have the other activities, you can't write. So ultimately, it's just a matter of choice. I'm not here to advise anybody or tell. I'm just telling that this is the life of an author, which you can decide whether you want to do it or not. But I'll tell you one thing, that once you write consistently, my mantra or formula is first write articles for a first couple of years, get known in the media circles, right? Mr. Sharma or Mr. Srivastava is an expert in trademark or patent or SEBI laws. Then you go on to write books and then get on and on. That's how you will get it. But today what has happened is you can take one more thing I'll say is, instead of having your own blog, sometimes I feel a person writes his own thoughts on the blog. Who's interested? Sorry. Who's interested? If you want to be well known, if you want to get known, write in the well-known journals, well-known portals, because ultimately you're writing for your understanding, you're also writing to be known in the marketplace. You see, because ultimately, why should anybody, if there are, say, 25,000 lawyers in Delhi High Court, hypothetically, why should anybody come to you? Because remember, in a service, people pay for the value you create. If you can argue a patent case better than anybody else, or if you know more of patent law than anybody else, people are going to come to you. And that clarity, that precision, that expertise will come only with writing. So these are the points I have made out. One more thing, remember, peculiar to India, which I just noted. Since I've been writing books, writing articles from 81, I tried, my first 2 books failed because it couldn't go to press. Import-export control I wrote, but there was no market for it, so we didn't publish it. Then I tried to get a digest, but it was running into copyright problems. So ultimately the book came in 88. Other thing which I had done was I had set a goal that I must have a nationally known book by the time I'm 30. That was the goal I set for myself. I missed the target by 2 years, it became 88. But anyway, so unless you set clear targets, you're not going to meet. Because as somebody said, if you don't know your destination, no wind is favorable. But once you know your destination, you can keep on course correcting. Like they say, a plane from New York to Los Angeles keeps on getting off track. But it knows it has to go to LA, so it will come back on track. So once you know that I've got to do this, you can keep coming back to track. One peculiar thing about Indian writing is this. In most Western countries, Srish will agree with me, the leading books are by academicians. Palmer Company Law, Gower, Wade. Sir William Wade was a professor. Mark Eliot. These are all people in Oxford, Cambridge, London University, etc., who write. They have lots of time to write. In India, unfortunately, you have a very, very serious problem of practicing and writing. So that makes your task that much more difficult. Who are the people who wrote the leading? Except Ramaya, who was not a continuous practicing lawyer. Palkhiwala was practicing. I wrote The Courtroom Genius. I had the opportunity of interviewing him. I met his brother. And I'll just tell you, just 1 minute, I'll finish. Palkhiwala, N.A. Palkhiwala and his brother used to write the book. As juniors, the typist was charging them too much. So Palkhiwala would dictate or write and Behram would type. So Nani Palkhiwala would come home after 7 o'clock, 7:30, and from 9 to 1 they would write when the book was to come. And Palkhiwala would then drive at 1 o'clock, drop Behram to his house and go back. That's how they wrote the book. So the unfortunate part in India is most of the books are written by lawyers. I'll only conclude by saying, I look here, I see some future lawyers, and I sincerely hope that we'll get classics from some of you in the future. Thank you.